Recently, financial YouTuber Caleb Hammer made some strong claims about the VA disability system, saying that the system is being abused. I'm going to show you that he's very wrong because, quite simply, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. But first, let's just see what he said.
How are you making money?
Oh, I'm a VA disability with dependents. We have 2 kids.
Right. Okay. 4,700 twice a month?
No, I make 4,700 once a month, and he makes 3,600 twice a month, and it equals between 11 and 12.
Are you going to get disability too?
Oh, yes, I will.
There is not a single veteran that has come on the show that does not just get endless money for the rest of their life with disability.
It breaks your body
It
and
really
mine.
does. I'm old. I've done a lot. I'm a police officer for the Navy.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of hardworking stuff throughout the time.
Yeah.
Which I got issues all around.
But even people that just served for like 3 years and they just sat on a base, they get it. Like, there has not been one single person on this entire show that doesn't get thousands of dollars for the rest of their life. I think it's like 5% of our budget now.
It's something.
It's something crazy.
Like that.
It's just disabilities forever.
Well, they serve their country, and they probably have earned it.
It's disability.
Yeah, I get that, but there's things that when you serve your country and you break your body or you can't
I
function
totally
the
agree.
same
I'm
way.
saying every single person that has ever been on this show who has literally just sat at a base and did nothing.
And I have a
also
lot of
gets
them.
this.
I know a lot of them. Yes. They will be able to claim some stuff. Yes.
I'm not saying if you go get hurt or anything. Like, I think that's why it's there, right?
Yes.
Right. That's what it's intended for.
That's what it's intended for. But, whew. Okay. What do you do for a living?
Well, I just got out of the military a year ago.
Do you have disability?
Yes.
Okay. What's coming in from that?
From the VA, it's about $4 grand.
Yeah. Of course you do, because there's not been one veteran in the history of this entire show that has not been on disability for the rest of their life. I'm totally good with military disability. We have an interesting fact that we've discovered in the show where we get veterans every other episode almost. There's not been one veteran, many of whom never actually went overseas, who are on disability for the rest of their life. This takes up 2% of the federal budget. 2% of the federal budget, just that alone, which is chunky. It's like $500 billion a year or something. So I'm not against it. It just seems like, there might be something wrong.
So now we can boil down his complaints into 3 things. First, every veteran gets thousands of dollars. Second, this money is for life. And third, many of these veterans just sat on a base and did nothing without even deploying overseas. Now, those are some big claims, and they have problems. It's clear that Caleb just doesn't fully understand how disability works with the VA, and that's not surprising. It's a complicated system, but it makes his criticism misleading. Now, it's not Caleb's fault that he doesn't understand these things. He's a financial YouTuber, not a military expert or a VA benefits expert. The problem is that he's gone out there and criticized something that he just doesn't understand. But let's look at why he's wrong. Issue number 1. He said every single veteran he's ever talked to is receiving thousands of dollars a month. The truth is that only 30% or so of veterans have any disability rating, and that means 70% of veterans are getting no disability benefits. And those who do have some sort of VA recognized disability, the monthly payment can be as low as $0. Yes, there are some disabilities that actually receive $0, but the veteran gets medical treatment for their disability. Only about 6% of veterans are rated at 100% disabled, and those are the ones that are getting $3,000 or $4,000 a month, just 6%. So just 6 out of every 100 veterans are getting $3,000 or more per month. Caleb's guests are the exception, not the rule. What Hammer is showing on his channel is something called selection bias. He has a show where he talks to people with money problems and he offers them suggestions. So he and his producers are choosing who's going to be on the show. And presumably, they're going to try to select people with extreme stories because that's better entertainment. And they're going to select people who have a lot of money because that's an easier group to offer advice to. I mean, what's he going to say to someone who's working minimum wage and struggling to afford rent right now? That's not going to make a good episode. And so what all this means is that even if he's telling the truth about his own experience with the people who have been on his show, that tells us nothing about veterans in general. We can look up those actual facts that the vast majority of veterans aren't receiving any disability benefits, and only a very small percentage are being paid $3,000 or $4,000 a month like the people in his clips. Second, Hammer says that disability is forever, and that these veterans get this money for life. Sometimes that's true, but it's not always true. Veterans' disabilities are classified as static or dynamic. A static disability is one where the VA has determined it's not likely to ever improve. If you lose a leg or something like that, it's not growing back. But also knee damage or something like that, back damage, can often be permanent. And so the VA, in such cases, will say the disability is probably for life. But many disabilities are dynamic, which means the VA says they can change with time and they'll be reevaluated. A good example is if a veteran has knee damage but is given knee surgery, the veteran might be given disability compensation during their recovery period, but then reevaluated after recovery. Another example can be mental health conditions, such as depression or PTSD. Sometimes they improve with treatment. So no, VA disability isn't automatically forever. Ratings can go up, down, or even be removed entirely depending on the veteran's health. Third, Hammer dismisses veterans who just sat on a base and never even went overseas. But deployment overseas isn't a requirement for disability compensation because it's not a requirement for being injured. VA disability is based on one's service to the country. Think about someone who enlisted in the Army in 1976, right after the Vietnam War. We didn't have another significant military involvement until the first Gulf War in the 1990s. Or think about someone who enlisted right after the first Gulf War. It was another decade before 9/11. So there are millions of veterans who served for years, but thankfully there wasn't a war during those years. But those veterans still trained for war. They still jumped out of airplanes, ran miles and miles with heavy gear. They did all sorts of other things that are hard on their bodies. If a veteran spent 8 years as an airborne ranger, jumping out of planes and injured their knees, is Caleb Hammer going to say that that person doesn't deserve compensation just because there wasn't a war? We have to understand what military service does to the body. Caleb mentioned people who just sat on a base, but the reality is that people in the military, even if they have an administrative job, are expected to be in good physical shape. Now, I'm a college professor, so I often see and deal with a lot of college athletes. And I think about this comparison between athletes and people in the military. Both groups are always pushing their bodies to be faster and stronger. And pushing your body like that carries a lot of risk. First, there's obviously the risk of a career-ending injury. Now, we expect most college athletes are going to finish their 4 or 5 years at college without a major career-ending injury. But we also understand that a certain percentage of them will have those career-ending injuries. Now, I couldn't find exact numbers on how often that happens to college athletes, but a 2021 study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine reported that the vast majority of career-ending injuries for athletes were injuries to their back, knees, or legs. And back and knee injuries are actually among the most common for veterans too. But that's just considering those big injuries that end an athlete's career. It doesn't count injuries that didn't end their career, but still had lasting impacts, and maybe even got progressively worse over the athlete's lifetime. VA disability allows for claims years later if the veteran can demonstrate that the disability stems from their military service. And we know many injuries, especially to knees and back, do get worse over time. A 2017 paper in Sports Health found that 40% of former NCAA athletes have osteoarthritis, almost twice the rate of non-athletes. So those years of pushing their bodies cause stress and damage that shows up years later. And a 2020 study published in the Journal of Sports Rehabilitation found that former Division I athletes were more likely than the general population to have limited physical function, to suffer from pain, and to suffer from depression. Again, even though their careers didn't end because of injury, their sports and training took tolls on their bodies that got worse over time. And the way veterans' disability compensation works, that can be compensated if the veteran can show that the problem later in life was caused by their military service. For example, if a veteran has military medical records showing a lower back injury during their service, and later in life they develop degenerative disc disease in those same vertebrae, the veteran might receive compensation for that. So if we think about this comparison between college athletes and military service members, it shouldn't be surprising that knee and back injuries are among the 4 most common VA disabilities. Well, what are the other 2? Hearing loss and PTSD. So why are knee and back injuries so common?
The last step in earning the badge was to complete the 12-mile trek in 3 hours while carrying 70 pounds of gear. With 13 minutes to go, the captain fell to her knees in exhaustion. But with her soldiers cheering her on, she rose to her feet and crossed the finish line.
Touch her.
Military service is hard on the body, even during training, and even just staying in top physical shape. And why is hearing loss so common?
Lake backlit, no one Rachel, stand by, fire! Come on, go McGrew.
All right, got visual on the truck. Engaging.
People in the military are very frequently exposed to very loud noises, even if they never go to war. And finally, there's PTSD. First, we need to understand that 2 decades of war that we recently has had a major impact on people. But if you look into PTSD, it can be caused by other things too. So even then, going to war isn't an actual requirement. At this point, it's also important to explain the difference between VA disability compensation and Social Security disability. Social Security is a welfare program. It's part of our social safety net, which means it's designed to keep people out of poverty in the event that they become disabled and can't work. As a result, Social Security disability requires the person to show that they can't work and that they don't have the financial resources to survive without this welfare. VA disability, however, is considered compensation for service and how that service has impacted the person's life. Social Security disability doesn't care, for example, about how much pain you're in. All they care about is, can you work? For veterans benefits, we do care about pain and suffering. Now, Caleb Hammer might want to argue against that. Maybe he would argue that America shouldn't compensate veterans unless they're totally unable to work. But that's not our current policy, and it's not likely to get a lot of support, I think. So let's go back to Hammer's 3 main points. No, not every veteran gets thousands of dollars every month. Many get nothing at all. Disability is not always for life. Ratings can change. And no, you do not have to be deployed to be injured. Service itself carries risk, just like playing college sports. Now, Caleb Hammer's rant is way off base, but the best conspiracy theories always have a grain of truth. And the truth is, there has been an increase in the number and percentage of veterans receiving benefits, even though Hammer was way off on those actual numbers. But why have more veterans received benefits recently? First, starting in the late 1990s to early 2000s, the military transitioned to a system where as service members were getting ready to leave the military, they would actually have their medical records reviewed to see if there might be some benefits they qualify for. Second, there were some legislative changes that made it easier for veterans exposed to toxic chemicals, such as Agent Orange, to receive benefits for certain medical conditions known to stem from those chemicals. My own father is a disabled veteran who has 2 diseases the VA has attributed to Agent Orange. And third, the more recent 2 decades of war did take a toll on people. The bottom line, VA disability exists because military service comes with real, lasting costs. To dismiss veterans as people who just sat on a base and did nothing isn't just inaccurate, it's disrespectful to the sacrifices they made. The recruiting office that those men and women walked through was open to Caleb too, but those people did walk through the doors and they served our country, and many of them gave up more than just a few years of their lives. Hammer owes them an apology. But Hammer is right about one thing. VA disability should be for those who get hurt, and that's exactly who it is for and who's receiving it. We, as a country, are just getting better at recognizing and compensating those injuries.